Hello freediving family, this is super exciting. Welcome to the first video of what will be the most extensive and comprehensive freediving manual ever created. Now, there are going to be two main differences between the videos that I make here and the videos that I make on YouTube. Number one, in these videos I'm going to be focused a little bit less on being funny or creating entertainment because, you know, you guys already know how funny I am, and I'll be focusing more on packing dense information or making complicated information as simple and communicable as possible. And the other thing is that I'm going to speak a little bit slower than I would in my YouTube videos because I know that my crazy Australian accent is a little bit challenging for a lot of people to understand at times, so I'm going to slow things down to make it a little bit more understandable. And over the course of these videos, I plan to cover every topic in freediving in as much detail as I possibly can. We're going to start with the physiology of freediving and what takes place in your body when you're holding your breath and when you're diving. The reason why we start with this is because when we are holding our breath, we experience a huge range of sensations. Some of these sensations feel great, and some of these sensations, especially in the beginning, can feel pretty awful. The thing is, with any negative sensations that we experience during a breath hold, they can so easily turn into panic and they can ruin the experience of the dive itself. I mean, for example, when we go running or swimming, we may feel tired or fatigue in our muscles or sore in our muscles, or we may feel the burn of lactic acid, and we don't freak out because we are accustomed to these experiences for that exercise or for that activity. But often when we feel the exact same thing during a dive, we will freak out because breath holds are a more unfamiliar world than any kind of aerobic or anaerobic exercise. And also because we are aware, in some part of our mind at least, that we can only survive underwater for so long, that we really have a finite period of time that we can do this for. And so that raises the stakes for us and leads us to panic. And so the first goal here is to truly understand what is going on in our body when we are holding our breath, what those sensations feel like and why, so we can make an effort to normalize them. So I'm going to start with what I call the journey of the oxygen molecule. I'm going to detail the process or the journey that a single oxygen molecule will make in your body. Keeping in mind that this explanation will be a huge oversimplification of these incredibly complex processes, but I'm going to just detail what's important to us as freedivers. Okay, so I take a breath in. Usually during life, we spend most of our time breathing with our nose. And that's because in our nasal cavity, we have a filtration system. We have nasal hairs that trap particles going in and out, and we have mucus that also will trap particles or any foreign substances that our body doesn't want in there. But when we're freediving, we're going to be breathing with our mouths because our masks will be covering our noses. And so just something to be aware of, when you are breathing all day or for hours at a time with your mouth, it's very normal for your mouth to get dry. It's also one of the reasons why you get dehydrated, because the nasal cavity will also humidify the air before it reaches your lungs. And so what we have with oral breathing is air that cannot be humidified or that isn't humidified going in and out of our lungs. And that dry air will often dry out your mouth and your throat, and then your body has to pull liquids there to keep them moist. So I'm breathing with my mouth. The air passes over the back of my tongue, which I use for equalization. It moves down past my vocal fold, also a very important part of the anatomy to understand when we come to talk about equalization, through the trachea, and then it hits the lungs. One of the greatest misconceptions in freediving is that lung capacity is something that's important. It's really not important for us. Your lungs will be proportional to your body size. Big people will have bigger lungs, but they also have bigger bodies to power with them. Small people will have smaller lungs, and it's proportional to their body. The lungs will be proportional to your body, and lung capacity as such is not super important. Your lungs, though, you can think of them kind of like a sponge, an ever-expanding sponge. Your lungs will keep expanding until they hit a wall that stops them. And that wall is the outward flexibility of your thoracic cavity, or the muscles, the cartilage, the bones, the cavity that encases your lungs. So when it comes to lung capacity, the only thing that we can really do to increase it in a way that's beneficial for us is to increase the flexibility of the muscles that surround your lungs. And the best way to do that is just by diving. So our oxygen molecule is now in our lungs. It funnels down the bronchial tree until it gets down to the smallest part of your lungs, called the alveoli. Now the alveoli is where the oxygen itself actually transfers from the lungs into the bloodstream. There are blood vessels that run along your alveoli, and the gas, the oxygen, moves from the alveoli into the bloodstream and then attaches to a red blood cell. Now, your arteries are carrying freshly oxygenated blood to all the extremities of your body. So that red blood cell gets shot out to your extremities and then filtered down to oxygenate all your tissues. All right, so what is oxygen even doing in the body? This is the engine of your body. All the food that you eat, all the carbohydrates that you eat, will eventually break down into some form of a glucose or a sugar. Now, the oxygen molecules are attracted to the bonds in between the glucose molecules, and your red blood cell will be cruising along throughout your body. It will spot some sugar. The hemoglobin, which is a protein which makes up part of your red blood cell, the hemoglobin is actually the part of the red blood cell that the oxygen makes its bond to. And that's important because we're going to talk about that in some more detail when we start talking about advanced physiology. But for now, we can just think of the oxygen molecule attaching to a red blood cell. That's fine. So the red blood cell is cruising around the body. The oxygen molecule spots a glucose molecule or a sugar molecule, and then the hemoglobin releases the oxygen, and the oxygen goes and crashes into and starts to break down the glucose molecule. And as you know, when we break small things, we create big energy. Like when we split an atom, we get big responses. The breaking down of that glucose molecule creates a heat, a biochemical heat that your body uses for all of its vital functions. So that is the main engine of our body. The air we breathe, crashing into and breaking down the food that we eat. And the heat powers our body. Now, as a byproduct of this biochemical reaction, your body creates two things. It creates water, which your body loves. We are, mostly water. That's all happy for us. But it also creates carbon dioxide, or CO2. Now, CO2 in high quantities is very toxic for the body, and it can kill you. So your body wants to get rid of that carbon dioxide. So what happens is that carbon dioxide dissolves into your blood plasma, and your veins carry it back to your heart to be pumped into your lungs for you to exhale again. So your arteries are carrying oxygen-rich blood to your extremities for your body to utilize, and your veins are carrying carbon dioxide-rich blood back to your lungs for you to exhale. So we inhale, the oxygen moves from our lungs into our bloodstream, the oxygen breaks down the glucose. As a byproduct, we create carbon dioxide, CO2, which our body wants to get rid of, because CO2, while it does serve a lot of functions in our body, as in our body has adapted to utilize the gas for a lot of things, which actually are very important for freediving as well, it doesn't serve any vital function, as in it doesn't keep us alive, it doesn't stimulate any of the processes in our body that keep us alive, keep us moving. So the body gets rid of it. It's a waste product. Now, why is this important for freediving? Because when you hold your breath, you don't allow your body to get rid of the CO2, so you build it up. And fun fact, it is carbon dioxide that gives your body, that gives you the urge to breathe, that gives you that sensation of wanting to breathe. And that specifically is what we are going to talk about in the next video.